We are jumping right into a truly wild dichotomy that's playing out right now up in the high Himalayas. We're looking at the Upper Ganga. This is an ancient, incredibly sacred landscape that is staring down a profound ecological and cultural crisis. It's this fascinating and honestly kind of heartbreaking place where absolute divine reverence is colliding head on with a staggering modern environmental challenge. So, can a river actually be a person? Just hold on to that thought for a second. Because as we go through this explainer, you're going to see how a radical modern legal battle and a 1,200-year-old mythological prophecy are both desperately trying to answer that exact question, all in a frantic bid to save the very same river. Okay, let's head up into the breathtaking region of Uttarakhand, India, the mighty Bhagirathi Valley. For millions of people, the river flowing through here isn't just, H2O. It is a literal mother goddess, the mythical Devi Ganga. The ancient belief is that she lived this very comfortable life in the heavens, but actually chose to descend to earth just to rid humanity of its sins. And honestly, grasping that deep spiritual foundation is absolutely crucial if we want to understand anything that's happening in this region today. And we're talking about a reverence that has shaped human interaction with this landscape for millennia. Way back around 400 CE, sacred texts like the Brahmananda Puran were already laying down specific rules for interacting with the river. By the 8th century, you've got the great sage Adi Shankaracharya composing these legendary hymns right on the banks. Fast forward a bit to 1817, and British explorers Hodgson and Herbert finally managed to map the river's icy source at the Gaumukh Glacier. To really wrap your head around the devotion here, just listen to how Adi Shankaracharya put it in his 8th century hymn. He wrote, "O goddess Ganga, you are the divine river descended from heaven, pure yet restless." You see, they didn't view it as just a geographical feature on a map. It was, and still is, a living, breathing, spiritual entity that forms the absolute foundation of millions of lives. You can literally see this intimate connection between nature and culture everywhere you look up there. The physical water of the river is deeply believed to slake the spiritual thirst of humanity. It's a place where the normal boundary between humans and their environment completely dissolves. They are one and the same. But there's a pretty massive shadow looming over all this holiness. Down in the town of Joshimath, inside an 8th century temple, there's this terrifying 1,200-year-old prophecy surrounding a sacred stone idol. The story goes that the right wrist of this idol is slowly but surely shrinking. And the prophecy warns that the moment that wrist finally snaps off, a catastrophic landslide will wipe out the route to the major Badrinath temple, forcing all worship to move to a totally new shrine. Now here is where the myth crashes right into reality. That ancient prophecy of a shrinking idol, it perfectly mirrors a very real, very physical crisis happening at this exact moment. Up at the icy source of the Ganga, the Gaumukh Glacier, the ice is shrinking just like the wrist of that deity. And the numbers we're looking at are frankly alarming. Gaumukh, the literal snout where this mighty river originates, is retreating by 10 to 40 meters every single year. I mean, let that sink in for a second. We're talking up to 40 meters of ancient foundational ice just vanishing annually. This isn't some folklore. It's a measurable, terrifying reality driven by a rapidly warming climate and intense local environmental pressures. So what exactly is driving those local pressures? Well, alongside global climate change, this specific region is dealing with an absolute explosion in human footfall. Tourism in Uttarakhand hasn't just grown, it has skyrocketed by an astonishing 155%. People are flocking to these pilgrimage sites in record numbers, and it's putting this unprecedented strain on a mountain ecosystem that is already incredibly fragile. To put that explosion into perspective, imagine your own home state, but suddenly the tourist population flooding in is a staggering 60% higher than the local population itself. The mountains simply weren't built to hold this many people at once. We're completely blowing past the carrying capacity of the hills, and that means more traffic, a ton of new construction, and, critically, a massive amount of waste. And here is the truly devastating result of overloading that environment. 1.5 billion liters. That is the sheer volume of sewage entering this sacred river system every single day. And oh, if that wasn't enough, you can go ahead and tack on another 500 million liters of industrial waste daily. The very water that millions literally worship as a pure, sin-cleansing goddess is actively being choked by modern human development. So, how do we even begin to fix a mess this huge? Well, that's where we hit a massive brick wall of clashing worldviews.
On one side, you've got the priests. Their perspective is strictly ritualistic. They believe the river is inherently pure, so they figure physical cleanliness is just beyond their spiritual scope. But then, on the other side, you have the technocrats and the engineers, who often look at those very religious rituals as just blind superstition that's directly causing the pollution. It's a completely paralyzing disconnect.
But it actually wasn't always this strict binary between religion and ecology. If we look back to the ancient Brahmananda Puran, again, written way back around 400 CE, it actually laid out highly specific environmental rules. It literally forbade defecation, washing clothes, or even tossing used floral offerings into the river. The ancients completely understood that to have spiritual reverence, you absolutely had to practice ecological stewardship.
Today, trying to balance those views is a nightmare. For example, the government recently tried to protect the area by declaring a 100-kilometer stretch of the river an ecologically sensitive zone, which basically halted the construction of large dams. But there was massive pushback. Locals and state officials argued that, sure, the environment needs protecting, but they also have critical economic and survival needs that rely entirely on those dams. It's this incredibly thorny web of survival, economy, and ecology.
This whole complex mess actually led to a really out-of-the-box legal move in 2017. A high court in Uttarakhand literally granted the rivers Ganga and Yamuna the exact same legal rights as a living, breathing human being. They declared them legal and living entities. This meant that polluting the river could legally be treated just like assaulting a person. It was this completely groundbreaking attempt to give the river the agency it needed to protect itself. But, as you might guess, that revolutionary protection was pretty short-lived. The Supreme Court of India ended up overturning the High Court's decision. Why? Because the state government stepped in and argued that treating a massive, sprawling river system as a human with enforceable rights was simply impractical. They said it would be literally impossible to actually implement and enforce across such a vast, industrialized geography. Which brings us right back to where we started in this explainer. Think about it. We have an ancient, mythical prophecy warning of a shrinking idol that triggers total destruction, sitting right alongside the harsh, measurable scientific reality of a shrinking glacier threatening a life-giving river. You really have to ask yourself, are they both just warning us of the exact same impending collapse? And ultimately, can we somehow bridge this massive gap between our deep spiritual reverence for the Ganga and our highly destructive modern treatment of it before the whole ecosystem just completely breaks down?